God's no is not a suggestion. The earlier you believe that, the better.
This is Faith Notes with Brenda.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to the fourth episode of Faith Notes with Brenda. To think that it's been 2 months since we've been on this journey, and every single time you're taking out time out of your busy time, of course, to listen and to just, sit back for about 20 minutes and just listen to this. It's just so amazing. It's mind-blowing. Thank you, everybody, for taking your time out to listen to this. And this is just a beautiful experience with you, the listeners. Now, you know how I usually love to start my episodes with a question, because I really want you to get into this space with me and really see my thought process and the things that I'm thinking. Now, you have probably prayed before. I hope you have. For one reason or another, I really do hope that you have. But you probably prayed about a thing, maybe a relationship, career path, a move, a business idea, those big decisions, or even the small ones. And you were probably so sure that God was going to say yes, because you had in mind that, this is going to be so good for you. This is going to be so big. It's going to be a launching pad to some kind of greatness, or just place you in platforms that you've always desired to be in. You probably waited, you fasted, and even added "in Jesus' name," like it was the final stamp. You know what I'm saying? And then after all of that prayer and all that, nothing. Or worse, he said no. We're going to be talking about when God says no today. And, that time when he probably said no and you did not want to hear it, you did not want to accept it. It was just nah, you can't be saying this. What did you do? You probably started to justify, trim, twist, or negotiate. See that negotiating one? I know what it means so much. You're probably saying things like, well, maybe God meant no, for now, maybe he's talking about timing for later. And of course, that does happen, where, he's probably saying no, but his no might not be a final, grand no, like forever, probably for a time. But of course, that would have to be specific. Or you start saying things like, maybe he wants me to try harder. Or the infamous line, God helps those who help themselves. Spoiler alert, that's not even in the Bible. I hope you know that. Right. So I started with this question because I know that people have at one point or another faced what they would call disappointments, because the prayers that they prayed weren't met with the answers that they desired. But it didn't mean that, God did not hear it, or God doesn't have our time, or he doesn't care much for your prayers and all of that thing, right? I remember there have been times in my life when I had to make a decision. I was asking God for direction, but deep down, I already knew what I wanted. And what I wanted was not God's will. I wanted God's approval instead of my will. And so I prayed, but my ears were shut. There are times where you would actually put yourself through fasting and prayer, but you shut your ears. Your heart would just be leaning the other way, in the way that you desire and have mapped out for yourself, because you believe that is the best decision, right? And so you might even ask for signs, but even when the red flags, the signs are red flags, but you color them white and you say it's peace, surrender. And for me, when God said no, I called it silence. So I was not acknowledging his response. So many times I feel like God doesn't even particularly give us cutout answers like that, because he already knows what we're going to do. So when it's like, you're going to do what you're going to do regardless, what's the point of asking God? Because we really don't like that kind of clarity, do we? But here's it. God's no is rather a form of redirection. It's not about denying you. We take it so personal, when God says no to us, or it's like children when their parents say no to them. They take it so personal as though their parents are saying no to their existence and no to their person, but really it is no to that request. God's no is really about delivering you from what you think is best to what actually is. And let's not forget Paul, the apostle, in 2 Corinthians 12 through 7 through to 9. Paul talks about this thorn in his flesh. And we see Paul pleading with God to take it away. But instead, God is like, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. Translation, I'm not taking the thorn, but I'll give you something deeper. And that's me. That's God in this case. So God's no is not a brick wall. And let's talk about the part where we really don't always want God's will. Sometimes, a lot of times rather, we desire that God just blesses our will. And He blesses our decisions and blesses our thoughts and blesses everything that we have decided to do. But if you think about it like that, you're not really listening, or you're not really asking for Him to speak. What you're doing is lobbying, right? We spiritualize our ambition. We disguise impatience as though it's stepping out in faith, right? We give it that quote like, oh, you step out in faith, you step out in boldness, when really it's disobedience. But God is not fooled. He sees our hearts even when our mouths are saying, your will be done. And sometimes, this is one I've personally experienced. We often mistake God's kind silence for permission. Because God is not saying, He's not really giving you a cut-out answer, like, okay, go ahead, my child, do what you want to do, or do not go there, do not take that decision, do not take that employment letter, do not take up that project, do not go to this place, do not have that relationship, do not do any of these things. Because He's not clearly saying it out, like shouting it in our ears, doesn't mean that He's permitting us to do it. A quick story. I know this girl for years now, almost 10 years if I would say. And when we first met, we tried to be friends. We tried the whole friendship thing out. It didn't really work. We just met on some places, but it didn't really work like friends. And we're apart for a while due to, distance and all of that. And then it came to a little while, we came back together. Now, I mean come back together as in we saw each other. I am straighter than a pole, okay? Let's get that clear. I'm a Jesus girl, so definitely I am straight, okay? Now that we have that settled, I eventually, just over the years, we lost contact. And by the time we came back in contact, she was talking to me and trying to talk about how she really wanted to be friends with me again. And I had to think about it, because not everybody who says Brenda or friend, let's be friends, will I turn and say, oh, the gates are wide open, come ye in. Nah, I'm gonna be like, do Jesus know you? Right? That's the first thing. And of course I had to fact check her life. And by the time I was doing my questions, I mean, there really are questions that you can ask people to really find out where their minds are. And I asked some really deep questions, and by the time she started to give me her response, I knew in that moment, like, nope, this person is not for me. But this is where I'm going. When I was asking her some questions and she was giving me some responses, and I asked her a question. I said, what do you think that God is going to say about this, or what He's saying? And then she said, well, I believe that in time, I have talked to God and told Him that if He doesn't want this for me, then He should cause something that's going to separate me from this person. And I said, do you know what the Bible is? Like, have you ever heard the word Bible? Or like, have you ever picked up a book called the Bible? Like, God is not going to come. God will seldomly come into your ears and shout, leave that person, or say no to that, when his word already has given you the map, the blueprint to what his thoughts are.
Trust you're loving this podcast? Make sure to follow Imagine Studios 116 on YouTube and Instagram to catch up with the whole crew. Now, back to Faith Notes with Brenda.
So God's silence isn't always approval, and delayed consequences, it doesn't equal divine agreement. So just because you're not reaping the fruit of what you have sown, that bad fruit that you have sown, doesn't mean that you have scaled through and that's just it. God is a God of grace, but he's still systemic in that sense. Now, the point where I really desire and wish that us Christians would come to agreement or surrender, is a place of surrender, right? Surrender to surrender. And this is what I mean. Yes, God's no is a form of divine love. Yes, God's no protects. Yes, it keeps us from what we cannot see, and things we don't even have any idea about, the evil that meant so, right? The tares of the devil. God's no demands obedience. This is a reality that we have to come to a deeper understanding. God's no demands trust. It demands total surrender. You don't get to negotiate with a king. I know, he's your father. I agree, he's mine too. But however, as much as he's a father, he is God. And he is ruler, sovereign. You know what sovereignty means? Having all authority and power over everything. This is why Hannah called him the Lord of hosts, because she knew whom she was asking something of, the one who had the power over all powers that was on earth and beneath and above. Right? So you really don't get to edit his word just so it fits your feelings or your desires. There's a line that many years ago, I used to believe that says, you can do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anyone. Sounds harmless, right? This is the question though. What if the person you're hurting is you? We externalize this thing so much, like, as long as people around you, you're not ruining anybody's life, you can do whatever you want as long as it makes you happy. That is such a lie of the devil from the pit of hellfire. What if that quote is just a cloak for irresponsibility, an excuse to not be accountable to God or people? Listen, when God says no, do you say no too? Or do you trim his word at the edges to make it fit your emotions? Do you try to tweak obedience just enough to still look surrendered? But really, you're still the one in control. There's no obedience without brokenness. I learned this about 3 years ago. And, just quick disclosure, full disclosure. And this is just like maybe a pro tip. Do not wait until God has to draw you and pull you like a mule to the place of brokenness before you get broken. I'm just seriously, don't do that. It'll be worse. Right? God will break you before he builds you. And that is undoubtedly. He will bend your will until it aligns with his. That's for sure. And if you fail that class that he's trying to teach you patience and character, you will have to repeat it. He will call you to lay your desires on the altar, not because he wants to watch you suffer, but he has to purge you. He has to give you something better. Because really, at the end of the day, you're the clay. He's the potter. The clay doesn't tell the potter, you probably should let me be right now or let me go. I'm perfect. Until it fits into the sculpture that the potter had in mind. But many of us, we want to control the spinning wheel. We say, oh Lord, Jesus, take the wheel. Jesus, take the wheel. Take it from my hand. But you're just giving him a dummy wheel and asking him to sit at the passenger seat. But you're still the one controlling things and moving things. Right? But the sculptor doesn't consult the sculpture. Now, let's go back to Exodus 32 again. I really do like to refer to that place because so many things started from that place, right? As Moses was up in the mountain to meet with God, and he stayed longer than the Israelites expected. And so what did we see them doing? They said, this guy, we don't know what happened to him. Make us gods who will go before us. So they made a golden calf. Yeah, we know that. Everybody knows that story. Yeah, they did confuse, Moses' absence for God's absence. But this is the deal. So they said, make us gods who will go before us, and they built a golden calf. Here's what hit me though. They were never after the golden calf. They were after control, what they could see, what they could touch, something that was tangible to them. And we do that. And so when God's process to them felt too slow, they rushed to produce something that looked divine but wasn't. We build golden ideas, golden relationships, golden decisions, all because waiting on God felt too risky. Or because we didn't really hear him. And so we think, oh, he's gone. Not everything that looks successful is led by the Spirit or inspired by the Spirit of God. And this is what I have learned when God says no. God is not a reactive one. It's not like you're dealing with chemicals here, acid and base. No, he doesn't do. He's not such person. He's sovereign, and that is the first thing that you must learn. And when he says no, it's not because he enjoys denying you. Just, he sees further than you do. And he knows what is ahead. He knows where that yes would have led you. He knows the cost you cannot calculate. He knows everything. He's all knowing. So when he says no, stop wrestling with God. Stop trying to negotiate with the Spirit of God as to why you think doing that thing that he's telling you to not do is better. Start resting. Trust that God is not robbing you of great things. He is just refining you so you can be the better version, the you that he knows, the you that he knew before he formed you in your mother's womb. That one. And that even if everything in you wants to run after that thing, even if everything in you is saying, you know what, rubber duck, if God's voice says no, then your heart must learn to echo it. If God says this must not happen, let your heart also lean towards that. Because in the end, the no you accept will, not might, not may, not maybe, not if, the no you accept from God is going to rescue you. Whether or not you thank him for it, it is going to rescue you from something. Stop wrestling with him. Just let go. You know the song, Let Go and Let God. Just let go. Total surrender. I know you might have to sacrifice so much there. You might have to let go of so many things that are important to you. But Paul says the things I used to consider gain, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. Like everything that would have just made sense to you independent of God. Everything that would have been gain, consider it loss now for the sake of Christ. And that's about it. Trust Him. Well, until next time, stay filled and stay faithful to God, because He's doing a great work in you, and just allow Him. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next episode, episode 5. Well, do you have an amazing, beautiful day ahead of you. Ciao.
This episode of Faith Notes with Brenda was proudly brought to you by Imagine Studios 116.